What groups of organisms have prokaryotic cells and which ones have eukaryotic cells?
All living organisms are grouped into three large groups called domains. They are bacteria, archaea, and eukarya. The domains bacteria, eubacteria or true bacteria, and archaea. Archaebacteria or ancient bacteria consist of unicellular organisms with prokaryotic cells. The domain eukarya consists of four kingdoms: Protista, fungi, plantae, and animalia. Organisms in these groups have eukaryotic cells. Eukaryon means true nucleus.
What is the size and location of the heart?
Heart size varies with body size. The average adult's heart is about 5.5 inches, 14 centimeters long and 3.5 inches, 9 centimeters, wide, or approximately the size of one's fist. The heart is located just above the diaphragm, between the right and left lungs. 1/3 of the heart is located on the right side of the chest, while 2/3 are located on the left side of the chest.
What are the stages of postnatal development?
The 5 life stages of postnatal development are: 1. Neonatal, 2. Infancy, 3. Childhood, adolescence, and 5. Maturity. The neonatal period extends from birth to 1 month. Infancy begins at 1 month and continues to 2 years of age. Childhood begins at 2 years of age and lasts until adolescence. Adolescence begins at around 12 or 13 years of age and ends with the beginning of adulthood. Adulthood, or maturity, includes the years between ages 18 to 25 and old age. The process of aging is called senescence.
Why are alchemical symbols for metals and astrological symbols for planets identical?
The ancient Greeks and Romans knew 7 metals and also knew 7 planets. The 5 nearer planets plus the Sun and the Moon. They related each planet to a specific metal. Alchemy, originating in about the 3rd century BCE, focused on changing base metals, such as lead, into gold. Although at times alchemy bordered on mysticism, it contains centuries of chemical experience, which provided the foundation for the development of modern chemistry.
When is a sonic boom heard?
As long as an airborne object, such as a plane, is moving below the speed of sound, called Mach 1, the disturbed air remains well in front of the craft. but as the craft passes Mach 1 and is flying at supersonic speeds, a sharp air pressure rise occurs in front of the craft. In a sense, the air molecules are crowded together and collectively impact. What is heard is a clap like thunder called a sonic boom or a supersonic bang. There are many shocks coming from a supersonic aircraft, but these shocks usually combine to form two main shocks. One coming from the nose and one from the aft end of the aircraft. Each of the shocks moves at a different velocity. If the time difference between the two shock waves is greater than 0.10 seconds apart, two sonic booms will be heard. This usually occurs when an aircraft ascends or descends quickly. If the aircraft moves more slowly, the two booms will sound like only one boom to the listener.
How much energy consumption in the United States is used by transportation?
Transportation accounts for only 25% of the total energy consumption in the United States. Industries and buildings account for 42% and 33%, respectively.
How often does a person blink?
The rate of blinking varies, but on average the eye blinks once every 5 seconds, 12 blinks per minute. Assuming the average person sleeps 8 hours a day and is awake for 16 hours. He or she would blink 11,520 times a day, or 4,204,800 times a year. The average blink of the human eye lasts about 0.05 seconds.
How did DDT affect the environment?
Although DDT was synthesized as early as 1874 by Othmar Zeidler, 1859 to 1911, it was the Swiss chemist Paul Müller, 1899 to 1965, who recognized its insecticidal properties in 1939. He was awarded the 1948 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for his development of dichlorodiphenyl trichloroethene, or DDT. Unlike the arsenic-based compounds then in use, DDT was effective in killing insects and seemed not to harm plants and animals. In the following 20 years it proved to be effective in controlling disease-carrying insects. Mosquitoes that carry malaria and yellow fever, and lice that carry typhus, and in killing many plant crop destroyers. Publication of Rachel Carson's Silent Spring in 1962 alerted scientists to the detrimental effects of DDT. Increasingly, DDT-resistant insect species and the accumulative hazardous effects of DDT on plant and animal life cycles led to its disuse in many countries during the 1970s.
Who is generally known as the founder of genetics?
Gregor Mendel, 1822 to 1884, an Austrian monk and biologist, is considered the founder of genetics. Mendel was the first to demonstrate transmission of distinct physical characteristics from generation to generation through his work with the garden pea. It was the English biologist William Bateson, 1861 to 1926, however, who brought Mendel's work to the attention of the scientific world and who coined the term genetics.
When will Niagara Falls disappear?
The water dropping over Niagara Falls digs great plunge pools at the base, undermining the shale cliff and causing the hard limestone cap to cave in. Niagara has eaten itself 7 miles, 11 kilometers, upstream since it formed 10,000 years ago. At this rate, it will disappear into Lake Erie in 22,800 years. The Niagara River connects Lake Erie with Lake Ontario and marks the U.S. Canada boundary, New York, Ontario.
Which elements are liquid at room temperature?
Mercury, liquid silver, Hg, element 80, and bromine, Br. Element 35, are liquid at room temperature 68 degrees to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 20 degrees to 21 degrees Celsius. Gallium, Ga, element 31, with a melting point of 85.6 degrees Fahrenheit 29.8 degrees Celsius, cesium, Cs. Element 55, with a melting point of 83 degrees Fahrenheit 28.4 degrees Celsius, and francium, Fr, element 87, with a melting point of 80.6 degrees Fahrenheit 27 degrees Celsius, are liquid at slightly above room temperature and pressure.
Is Chicago the windiest city?
Dodge City, Kansas, with an average wind speed of 13.9 miles per hour. 22.4 kilometers per hour, ranks number 1 as the windiest city. By comparison, the average wind speed in Chicago is only 10.3 miles per hour, 16.6 kilometers per hour. The highest surface wind ever recorded was on Mount Washington, New Hampshire, at an elevation of 6,288 feet, 1.9 kilometers. On April 12, 1934, its wind speed was 231 miles, 371.7 kilometers per hour, and its average wind speed was 35 miles, 56.3 kilometers per hour. The windiest place on Earth is Antarctica, where winds can gust up to 200 miles per hour. 322 kilometers per hour, which is twice as hard as in an average hurricane.
Why are topographic maps important?
Topographic maps are distinguished by the contour lines that portray the shape and elevation of the land. They display the three-dimensional ups and downs of the terrain on a two-dimensional surface. Topographic maps usually portray natural features, such as mountains, valleys, plains, lakes, rivers, and vegetation, and man-made features, such as roads, boundaries, transmission towers, and even major buildings. Topographic maps are used by professionals for engineering, environment management, conservation of natural resources, energy exploration, public works design, and general commercial and residential planning. They are also used by individuals for outdoor recreational activities such as camping, hiking, biking, and fishing.
Who coined the phrase survival of the fittest?
Although frequently associated with Darwinism, this phrase was coined by Herbert Spencer. 1820 to 1903, an English sociologist. It is the process by which organisms that are less well adapted to their environment tend to perish and better adapted organisms tend to survive.
What are Koch's postulates?
Robert Koch was the first to identify that various microorganisms are the cause of disease. His four basic criteria of bacteriology, known as Koch's postulates, are still considered fundamental principles of bacteriology. The characteristics are as follows: 1. The organism must be found in tissues of animals that have been infected with the disease, rather than in disease-free animals. 2. The organism must be isolated from the diseased animal and grown in a pure culture or in vitro. 3. The cultured organism must be able to be transferred to a healthy animal, which will show signs of the disease after having been exposed to the organism. 4. The organism must be able to be isolated from the infected animal. Koch was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1905 for his research on tuberculosis.
How is absolute zero defined?
Absolute zero is the theoretical temperature at which all substances have zero thermal energy. Originally conceived as the temperature at which an ideal gas at constant pressure would contract to zero volume, absolute zero is of great significance in thermodynamics and is used as the fixed point for absolute temperature scales. Absolute zero is equivalent to 0 K, minus 459.67 degrees Fahrenheit, or minus 273.15 degrees Celsius. The velocity of a substance's molecules determines its temperature. The faster the molecules move, the more volume they require, and the higher the temperature becomes. The lowest actual temperature ever reached was 2 billionth of a degree above absolute zero. 2 x 10-9 K, by a team at the Low Temperature Laboratory in the Helsinki University of Technology, Finland, in October 1989.
What is Gray's manual?
Gray's Manual of Botany, first published in 1848 by Asa Gray. 1810 to 1888, under the title Manual of the Botany of Northern United States. Was one of the first guides to the identification of plants of eastern North America. The publication contained keys and thorough descriptions of plants. The 8th, and centennial, edition was largely rewritten and expanded by Merritt Lyndon Fernald. 1873 to 1950, and published in 1950. This edition was corrected and updated by R.C. Rollins and reprinted in 1987 by Dioscorides Press.
How does the anatomical usage of the word arm differ from the common usage?
Anatomically, the word arm refers only to the humerus, the long bone between the shoulder and the elbow. Common usage refers to the entire length of the limb from the shoulder to the wrist as the arm.
What is the difference between a virus and a viroid?
Viroids are small fragments of nucleic acid, RNA, without a protein coat. They are usually associated with plant diseases and are several thousand times smaller than a virus.
What were some of the leading contributions of Albert Einstein?
Albert Einstein was the principal founder of modern theoretical physics, his theory of relativity. Speed of light is a constant and not relative to the observer or source of light, and the relationship of mass and energy. E equals mc2, fundamentally changed human understanding of the physical world. During a single year in 1905, he produced 3 landmark papers. These papers dealt with the nature of particle movement known as Brownian motion, the quantum nature of electromagnetic radiation as demonstrated by the photoelectric effect, and the special theory of relativity. Although Einstein is probably best known for the last of these works, it was for his quantum explanation of the photoelectric effect that he was awarded the 1921 Nobel Prize in Physics. His stature as a scientist, together with his strong humanitarian stance on major political and social issues, made him one of the outstanding men of the 20th century.
Since fungi lack chlorophyll necessary to produce their own food, how do they obtain food?
Fungi are saprobes that absorb nutrients from wastes and dead organisms. Instead of taking food inside its body and then digesting it as an animal would, A fungus digests food outside its body by secreting strong hydrolytic enzymes onto the food. In this way, complex organic compounds are broken down into simpler compounds that the fungus can absorb through the cell wall and cell membrane.
Which bird migrates the greatest distance?
The Arctic tern, Sterna paradisea, migrates the longest distance of any bird. They breed from subarctic regions to the very limits of land in the Arctic of North America and Eurasia. At the end of the northern summer, the Arctic tern leaves the north on a migration of more than 11,000 miles. 17,699 kilometers, to its southern home in Antarctica. A tern tagged in July on the Arctic coast of Russia was recovered the next May near Fremantle. Australia, a record 14,000 miles, 22,526 kilometers, away.
Who were the first married couple to go into space together?
Astronauts Jan Davis and Mark Lee were the first married couple in space. They flew aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour on an 8-day mission that began on September 12, 1992. Ordinarily, NASA bars married couples from flying together. An exception was made for Davis and Lee because they had no children and had begun training for the mission long before they got married.
What is the secret of bonsai, the Japanese art of growing dwarf trees?
These miniature trees with tiny leaves and twisted trunks can be centuries old. To inhibit growth of the plants, they have been carefully deprived of nutrients, pruned of their fastest growing shoots and buds, and kept in small pots to reduce the root systems. Selective pruning, pinching out terminal buds, and wiring techniques are devices used to control the shape of the trees. Bonsai possibly started during the Zhou dynasty, 900 to 250 BCE, in China, when emperors made miniature gardens that were dwarf representations of the provincial lands that they ruled.
What are gymnosperms and which plants are included in this group?
Gymnosperms, from the Greek terms gymnos, meaning naked, and sperma, meaning seed, produce seeds that are totally exposed or borne on the scales of cones. The four phyla of gymnosperms are, Coniferophyta, conifers including pine, spruce, hemlock and fir. Ginkgophyta, consisting of one species, the ginkgo or maidenhair tree, Cycladophyta. The cycads or ornamental plants, and Gnetophyta, a collection of very unusual vines and trees.
What is Lou Gehrig's disease?
Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, sometimes called Lou Gehrig's. 1903 to 1941, disease after the New York Yankees baseball player who retired from baseball in 1939 after being diagnosed with ALS, is a motor neuron disease of middle or late life. It results from a progressive degeneration of nerve cells controlling voluntary motor functions that ends in death 3 to 10 years after onset. There is no cure for it. At the beginning of the disease, the patient notices weakness in the hands and arms, with involuntary muscle quivering and possible muscle cramping or stiffness. Eventually all four extremities become involved. As nerve degeneration progresses, disability occurs, and physical independence declines until the patient, while mentally and intellectually aware, can no longer move, swallow, or breathe.
How are seedless grapes grown?
Since seedless grapes cannot reproduce in the manner that grapes usually do, i.e., dropping seeds, growers have to take cuttings from the plants, root them, and then plant the plant cuttings. Seedless grapes come from a naturally occurring mutation in which the hard seed casing fails to develop. Although the exact origin of seedless grapes is unknown, they might have been first cultivated thousands of years ago in present-day Iran or Afghanistan. Currently, 90% of all raisins are made from Thompson seedless grapes.
Which nations contribute to the International Space Station?
"16 nations, representing 5 space agencies, contribute scientific, technological, and financial resources and knowledge to the International Space Station. The cooperating nations are, the United States, National Aeronautics and Space Administration or NASA; Russia, Russian Federal Space Agency; Canada, Canadian Space Agency or CSA; Japan, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency or JAXA; Brazil, and 11 member countries of the European Space Agency, ESA. The 11 member countries of the ESA are, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom.
What is fool's gold?
Iron pyrite, FeS2, is a mineral popularly known as fool's gold. Because of its metallic luster and pale brass yellow color, it is often mistaken for gold. Real gold is much heavier, softer, not brittle, and not grooved.
How much wood is used to make a ton of paper?
In the United States, the wood used for the manufacture of paper is mainly from small diameter bolts and pulpwood. It is usually measured by the cord or by weight. Although the fiber used in making paper is overwhelmingly wood fiber, a large percentage of other ingredients is needed. 1 ton of a typical paper requires 2 cords of wood, but also requires 55,000 gallons. 208,000 liters of water, 102 pounds, 46 kilograms, of sulfur, 350 pounds, 159 kilograms, of lime. 289 pounds, 131 kilograms, of clay, 1.2 tons of coal, 112 kilowatt-hours of power, 20 pounds, 9 kilograms. Of dye and pigments, and 108 pounds, 49 kilograms, of starch, as well as other ingredients.
What is a bacteriophage?
A bacteriophage, also called a phage, is a virus that infects bacteria. The term bacteriophage means bacteria eater, from the Greek word phagein, which means to devour. Phages consist of a long nucleic acid molecule, usually DNA, coiled within a polyhedral-shaped protein head. Many phages have a tail attached to the head. Fibers extending from the tail may be used to attach the virus to the bacterium.
How many types of sensory receptors have been identified?
Five types of sensory receptors, each responding to a different type of stimulus, have been identified.
What is the composition of the tiles on the underside of the Space Shuttle and how hot do they get?
The 20,000 tiles are composed of a low-density, high-purity silica fiber insulator hardened by ceramic bonding. Bonded to a Nomex fiber felt pad, each tile is directly bonded to the shuttle exterior. The maximum surface temperature can reach up to 922 K to 978 K, 649 degrees Celsius to 704 degrees Celsius or 1200 degrees Fahrenheit to 1300 degrees Fahrenheit.
What are the 7 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease?
The 7 warning signs of Alzheimer's disease are: asking the same question over and over again, repeating the same story, word for word, again and again, forgetting how to cook, how to make repairs, how to play cards, or any other activities that were previously done with ease and regularity. Losing one's ability to pay bills or balance one's checkbook, getting lost in familiar surroundings, or misplacing household objects, neglecting to bathe, or wearing the same clothes over and over again. while insisting that one has taken a bath or that clothes are still clean, relying on someone else, such as a spouse, to make decisions. It is important to understand that even if someone has several or even most of these symptoms, it does not mean they definitely have Alzheimer's disease. It does mean they should be thoroughly examined by a medical specialist trained in evaluating memory disorders, such as a neurologist or a psychiatrist, or by a comprehensive memory disorder clinic with an entire team of experts knowledgeable about memory problems.
What are quasars?
The name quasar originated as a contraction of quasi-stellar radio source. Quasars appear to be star-like, but they have large redshifts in their spectra, indicating that they are receding from Earth at great speeds, some at up to 90% the speed of light. Their exact nature is still unknown, but many believe quasars to be the cores of distant galaxies, the most distant objects yet seen. Quasars, also called quasi-stellar objects or QSOs, were first identified in 1963 by astronomers at the Palomar Observatory in California.
What are the parts of a leaf and the major functions of leaves?
Leaves, outgrowths of the shoot apex, are found in a variety of shapes, sizes, and arrangements. Most leaves have a blade, a petiole, stipules, and veins. The blade is the flattened portion of the leaf. The petiole is the slender stalk of the leaf. The stipules, found on some but not all leaves, are located at the base of the petiole where it joins the stem. Stipules may be leaf-like and show considerable variation in size. Veins, xylem, and phloem run through the leaf. Leaves are the main photosynthetic organ. However, they are also important in gas exchange and water movement throughout the whole plant.
What is a dolphin-safe tuna?
The order Cetacea, composed of whales, dolphins, and porpoises, were spared from the extinction of large mammals at the end of the Pleistocene about 10,000 years ago.
How many acres of wetlands have been lost in the United States?
Wetlands are the lands between aquatic and terrestrial areas, such as bogs, marshes, swamps, and coastal waters. At one time considered wastelands, scientists now recognize the importance of wetlands to improve water quality, stabilize water levels, prevent flooding, regulate erosion, and sustain a variety of organisms. The United States has lost approximately 100 million acres of wetland areas between colonial times and the 1970s. The 1993 Wetlands Plan established a goal of reversing the trend of 100,000 acres of wetland loss to 100,000 acres of wetland recovery. The most recent Wetlands Status and Trends Report, 1998 to 2004. Published in 2005 by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, showed a gain of 191,750, 77,630 ha. Wetland acres, or an average annual net gain of 32,000 acres of wetlands. The net gain in wetland area is attributed to wetlands created, enhanced, or restored.
When was RNA discovered?
By the 1940s it was known that there was another kind of nucleic acid other than DNA, this one called RNA. Phoebus Levine, 1869 to 1940, a Russian-born chemist. Further refined the work of Albrecht Kossel, 1853 to 1927. Kossel was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1910 for determining the composition of nuclein. At the time of Kossel's work, it was not clear that DNA and RNA were different substances. In 1909, Levine isolated the carbohydrate portion of nucleic acid from yeast and identified it as the pentose sugar ribose. In 1929, he succeeded in identifying the carbohydrate portion of the nucleic acid isolated from the thymus of an animal. It was also a pentose sugar, but it differed from ribose in that it lacked one oxygen atom. Levine called the new substance deoxyribose. These studies define the chemical differences between DNA and RNA by their sugar molecules.
What are the two types of nuclear reactors in the United States?
Nuclear power plants contain a reactor unit that releases heat to turn water into steam, which then drives the turbine generators that generate electricity. There are two types of reactors in the United States, boiling water reactors and pressurized water reactors. In a boiling water reactor, the water heated by the reactor core turns directly into steam in the reactor vessel and is then used to power the turbine generator. In a pressurized water reactor, the water heated by the reactor core is kept under pressure and does not turn to steam. The hot, radioactive, liquid water then flows through and heats thousands of tubes in a steam generator. Outside the hot tubes in the steam generator is non-radioactive water which boils and turns to steam. The radioactive water flows back into the reactor core, where it is reheated and then returns to the steam generator.
Is anyone looking for extraterrestrial life?
A program called SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, began in 1960, when American astronomer Frank Drake 1930, spent 3 months at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory in Green Bank, West Virginia, searching for radio signals coming from the nearby stars Tau Ceti and Epsilon Eridani. Although no signals were detected and scientists interested in SETI have often been ridiculed. Support for the idea of seeking out intelligent life in the universe has grown. Project Sentinel, which used a radio dish at Harvard University's Oak Ridge Observatory in Massachusetts, could monitor 128,000 channels at a time. This project was upgraded in 1985 to META, Megachannel Extraterrestrial Assay. Thanks in part to a donation by filmmaker Steven Spielberg. Project META is capable of receiving 8.4 million channels. NASA began a 10-year search in 1992 using radio telescopes in Arecibo, Puerto Rico, and Barstow, California. Scientists are searching for radio signals that stand out from the random noises caused by natural objects. Such signals might repeat at regular intervals or contain mathematical sequences. There are millions of radio channels and a lot of sky to be examined.
How are hurricanes classified?
The Saffir/Simpson hurricane damage potential scale assigns numbers 1 through 5 to measure the disaster potential of a hurricane's winds and its accompanying storm surge. The purpose of the scale, developed in 1971 by Herbert Saffir, 1917 to 2007, and Robert Simpson, 1912. Is to help disaster agencies gauge the potential significance of these storms in terms of assistance. Minimal no real damage to building structures. Some tree, shrubbery, and mobile home damage. Coastal road flooding and minor pier damage. Moderate some roof, window, and door damage. Considerable damage to vegetation, mobile homes, and piers. Coastal and low-lying escape routes flood 2 to 4 hours before center of storm arrives. Small craft can break moorings in unprotected areas. Extensive some structural damage to small or residential buildings. Mobile homes destroyed. Flooding near coast destroys structures and floods of homes 5 feet. 1.5 meters, above sea level as far inland as 6 miles, 9.5 kilometers. Extreme extensive roof, window, and door damage. Major damage to lower floors of structures near the shore. And some roof failure on small residences. Complete beach erosion. Flooding of terrain 10 feet, 3 meters. Above sea level as far as 6 miles, 9.5 kilometers, inland requiring massive residential evacuation. Catastrophic complete roof failure to many buildings. Some complete building failure, with small utility buildings blown away. Major damage to lower floors of all structures 19 feet, 5.75 meters. Above sea level located within 500 yards, 547 meters, of the shoreline. Massive evacuation of residential areas on low ground 5 to 10 miles. 8 to 16 kilometers from shoreline may be required.
What scientific article has the most authors?
The article First Measurement of the Left-Right Cross-Section Asymmetry in Z Boson Production by E and E Collisions. Published in Physical Review Letters. Volume 70, Issue 87, April 26, 1993, pages 2515 to 2520, listed 406 authors on 2 pages.
What are the major parts of vascular plants?
Vascular plants consist of roots, shoots, and leaves. The root system penetrates the soil and is below ground. The shoot system consists of the stem and the leaves. The root system is the part of the plant below ground level. It consists of the roots that absorb water and various ions necessary for plant nutrition. The root system anchors the plant in the ground. The shoot system is the part of the plant above ground level. It consists of the stem and leaves. The stem provides the framework for the positioning of the leaves. The leaves are the sites of photosynthesis.
How much DNA is in a typical human cell?
If the DNA in a single human cell were stretched out and laid end to end, it would measure approximately 6.5 feet, 2 meter. The average human body contains 10 to 20 billion miles. 16 to 32 billion kilometers of DNA distributed among trillions of cells. If the total DNA in all the cells from one human were unraveled, it would stretch to the sun and back more than 500 times.
How were fungi involved in World War I?
During World War I, the Germans needed glycerol to make nitroglycerin, which is used in the production of explosives such as dynamite. Before the war, the Germans had imported their glycerol. But this impact was prevented by the British naval blockade during the war. The German scientist Karl Neuberg, 1877 to 1956, knew that trace levels of glycerol are produced when Saccharomyces cerevisiae is used during the alcoholic fermentation of sugar. He sought and developed a modified fermentation process in which the yeast would produce significant quantities of glycerol and less ethanol. The production of glycerol was improved by adding 3.5% sodium sulfite at pH 7 to the fermentation process, which blocked one chemical reaction in the metabolic pathway. Neuberg's procedure was implemented with the conversion of German beer breweries to glycerol plants. The plants produced 1,000 tons of glycerol per month. After the war ended, the production of glycerol was not in demand, so it was suspended.
What was the greatest natural disaster in U.S. history?
The greatest natural disaster occurred when a hurricane struck Galveston, Texas, on September 8, 1900, and killed over 8,000 people.
Who was Charles Darwin?
The theory of natural selection proposed by Charles Darwin, 1809 to 1882, revolutionized all aspects of natural science. Darwin was born into a family of physicians and planned to follow his father and grandfather in that profession. Unable to stand the sight of blood, he studied divinity at Cambridge and received a degree from the university in 1830.
What is unique about the rotation of the planet Venus?
Unlike Earth and most of the other planets, Venus rotates in a retrograde, or opposite, direction with relation to its orbital motion around the Sun. It rotates so slowly that only 2 sunrises and sunsets occur each Venusian year. Uranus's rotation is also retrograde.
What is a tabby cat?
Tabby, the basic feline coat pattern, dates back to the time before cats were domesticated. The tabby coat is an excellent form of camouflage. Each hair has 2 or 3 dark and light bands, with the tip always dark. There are 4 variations on the basic tabby pattern. The mackerel, also called striped or tiger, tabby has a dark line running down the back, from the head to the base of the tail, with several stripes branching down the sides. The legs have stripes, and the tail has even rings with a dark tip. There are 2 rows of dark spots on the stomach. Above the eyes is a mark shaped like an M and dark lines run back to the ears. 2 dark necklace-like bands appear on the chest. The blotched or classic tabby markings seem to be the closest to those found in the wild. The markings on the head, legs, tail, and stomach are the same as the mackerel tabby. The major difference is that the blotched tabby has dark patches on the shoulder and side, rimmed by 1 or several lines. The spotted tabby has uniformly shaped round or oval dark spots all over the body and legs. The forehead has an M on it, and a narrow, dark line runs down the back. The Abyssinian tabby has almost no dark markings on its body. They appear only on the forelegs, the flanks, and the tail. The hairs are banded except on the stomach, where they are light and unicolored.
Why is the first cervical vertebra, C1, called the atlas?
The first cervical vertebra is called the atlas after the Greek god Atlas, who was condemned to carry the earth and heavens on his shoulders. This vertebra has a ring-like structure with a large central opening and supports the head.
How old is the solar system?
It is currently believed to be 4.5 billion years old. Earth and the rest of the solar system formed from an immense cloud of gas and dust. Gravity and rotational forces caused the cloud to flatten into a disk and much of the cloud's mass to drift into the center. This material became the Sun. The leftover parts of the cloud formed small bodies called planetesimals. These planetesimals collided with each other, gradually forming larger and larger bodies, some of which became the planets. This process is thought to have taken about 25 million years.
What freshwater mammal is venomous?
The male duck-billed platypus, Ornithorhynchus anatinus, has venomous spurs located on its hind legs. When threatened, the animal will drive them into the skin of a potential enemy, inflicting a painful sting. The venom this action releases is relatively mild and generally not harmful to humans.
Which parts of the brain are involved in higher order functions, such as learning and memory?
Higher order functions, such as learning and memory, involve complex interactions among areas of the cerebral cortex and between the cortex and other areas of the brain. Information is processed both consciously and unconsciously. Since higher order functions are not part of the programmed wiring of the brain, the functions are subject to modification and adjustment over time.
Why can't metal objects be placed in a microwave?
Metal objects should not be used in a microwave, except as directed by the manufacturer. Because the microwaves are reflected off these materials and do not allow the heat to penetrate the food. The oven could be damaged by an arc between the metal utensils and the cavity interior, or door assembly if the cooking load is not large enough to absorb the microwave energy.
What is the meaning of the numbers in a blood pressure reading?
When blood is forced into the aorta, it exerts a pressure against the walls. This is referred to as blood pressure. The upper number, the systolic, measures the pressure during the period of ventricular contraction. The lower number, the diastolic, measures the pressure when blood is entering the relaxed chambers of the heart. While these numbers can vary due to age, sex, weight, and other factors. The normal blood pressure is around 110/60 to 140/90 mm of mercury.
What are the 7 Millennium Prize problems?
The 7 Millennium Prize problems are, Birch and Swinnerton-Dyer conjecture, Hodge conjecture, Poincaré conjecture, Riemann hypothesis, solution of the Navier-Stokes equations, formulation of the Yang-Mills theory, PVSNP.
What were Benjamin Franklin's contributions to meteorology?
Benjamin Franklin, who is said to have discovered electricity by flying a kite in a storm, made the important discovery that low-pressure systems caused the atmosphere to circulate in a rotating pattern. He made this discovery in 1743, after unsuccessfully attempting to view an eclipse on October 21. There was a storm in Philadelphia at the time, but he later learned that the skies were clear in Boston that day. He then found out that the storm that had been in Philadelphia traveled to Boston the next day. From this information, he surmised that the storm was traveling in a clockwise manner from southwest to northeast. Franklin thus concluded that the low-pressure system was causing the storm to move in this manner. Severe thunderstorm warning, issued when either a severe thunderstorm is indicated by radar or a spotter reports a thunderstorm producing hail 0.75 inch, 2 centimeters in diameter and / or winds equal to or exceeding 58 miles per hour, 93 kilometers per hour. Lightning frequency is not a criterion for issuing a severe thunderstorm warning. It is advisable to seek safe shelter immediately when a severe thunderstorm warning is issued. Tornado watch, issued when conditions are favorable for the development of tornadoes in the area. They normally are issued well in advance of the actual occurrence of severe weather for a duration of 4 to 8 hours. Tornado warning, issued when a tornado is indicated by radar or sighted by spotters. People in the affected area should seek safe shelter immediately. They are usually issued for around 30 minutes. Wind advisory, issued when there are sustained winds of 25 to 39 miles per hour. 40 to 63 kilometers per hour, and / or gusts to 57 miles per hour, 92 kilometers per hour. Winter weather advisory, issued when a low-pressure system produces a combination of winter weather. Snow, freezing rain, sleet, that presents a hazard, but does not meet warning criteria. Winter storm watch, issued when there is the potential for heavy snow or Significant ice accumulations usually at least 24 to 36 hours in advance. The criteria for this watch can vary from place to place. Winter storm warning, issued when a winter storm is producing or is forecast to produce heavy snow or significant ice accumulations. The criteria for this warning can vary from place to place.
What are the floaters that move around on the eye?
Floaters are semi-transparent specks perceived to be floating in the field of vision. Some originate with red blood cells that have leaked out of the retina. The blood cells swell into spheres, some forming strings, and float around the areas of the retina. Others are shadows cast by the microscopic structures in the vitreous humor, a jelly-like substructure located behind the retina. A sudden appearance of a cloud of dark floaters. If accompanied by bright light flashes, could indicate retinal detachment.
What is the difference between an endangered species and a threatened species?
An endangered species is one that is in danger of extinction. Throughout all or a significant portion of its range. A threatened species is one that is likely to become endangered in the foreseeable future due to declining numbers.
Where are bacteria found?
Bacteria inhabit every place on Earth, including places where no other organism can survive. Bacteria have been detected as high as 20 miles, 32 kilometers, above the Earth and 7 miles, 11 kilometers, deep in the waters of the Pacific Ocean. They are found in extreme environments, such as the Arctic tundra, boiling hot springs, and our bodies. Heat-tolerant bacteria have been found at a gold mine in South Africa at a level of 2.17 miles. 3.5 kilometers, below Earth's surface, where the temperature in the mine was 149 degrees Fahrenheit 65 degrees Celsius.
What is the law of complementary base pairing?
The law of complementary base pairing refers to the pairing of nitrogenous bases in a specific manner. Purines pair with pyrimidines. More specifically, adenine must always pair with thymine, and guanine must always pair with cytosine. The basis of this law came from the data obtained by Edwin Chargaff, 1905 to 2002, and is known as Chargaff's law, or rule.
Does hot water freeze faster than cold?
A bucket of hot water will not freeze faster than a bucket of cold water. However, a bucket of water that has been heated or boiled, then allowed to cool to the same temperature as the bucket of cold water, may freeze faster. Heating or boiling drives out some of the air bubbles in water. Because air bubbles cut down thermal conductivity, they can inhibit freezing. For the same reason, previously heated water forms denser ice than unheated water. Which is why hot water pipes tend to burst before cold water pipes.
What was the contribution of drive Gorgas to the building of the Panama Canal?
Dr. William C. Gorgas, 1854–1920, brought the endemic diseases of Panama under control by destroying mosquito breeding grounds, virtually eliminating yellow fever and malaria. His work was probably more essential to the completion of the canal than any engineering technique.
Who developed the process for making ammonia?
Known since ancient times, ammonia, NH3, has been commercially important for more than 100 years. The first breakthrough in the large-scale synthesis of ammonia resulted from the work of Fritz Haber, 1863–1934.
When were hearing aids invented?
Specially designed hearing aids were described as early as 1588 by Giovanni Battista Porta. 1535–1615, in his book Natural Magic. These hearing aids were made out of wood in the shape of the ears of animals with a sharp sense of hearing. During the 1700s, speaking tubes and ear trumpets were developed. Bone conduction devices to transmit sound vibrations from outside to the bones of the ear. First suggested in 1550 by Gerolamo Cardano, 1501–1576, were further developed during the 1800s. The first battery-powered hearing aid in the United States was made by the Dictograph Company in 1898. Miller Reese Hutchison. 1876–1944, filed the patent for the first electric hearing aid in 1901. Refinements were made to the hearing aids throughout the 20th and 21st centuries. Miniaturization and microchips made it possible for hearing aids to become so small they now fit invisibly inside the ear.
What is Ikebana?
Ikebana is the Japanese expression for the arrangement of living material in water. It is the ancient Japanese art of flower arrangement. Ikebana follows certain ancient rules that aim at achieving perfect harmony, beauty, and balance. Some describe Ikebana as sculpture with flowers. In Japan it has been practiced for 1,400 years. Buddhist monks in the 6th century practiced the art using pebbles, rock, and wood with plants and flowers. In Japan, ikebana was evolved and practiced exclusively by men priests first, then warriors and noblemen. Today, of course, ikebana is practiced by millions of women as well as men. Although the great flower schools in Japan are mostly headed by men.
When was the National Weather Service founded?
The National Weather Service is part of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA. It was started on February 9, 1870 when President Ulysses S. Grant, 1822–1885, signed a joint resolution of Congress authorizing the Secretary of War to establish a National Weather Service. Its first official name was the National Weather Bureau. It was renamed the U.S. Weather Bureau in 1891 and became the National Weather Service in 1967. Its mission is to provide weather, hydrologic, and climate forecasts and warning for the citizens of the United States, its territories, adjacent waters, and ocean areas in order to protect life and property and for the enhancement of the national economy. Weather observations are now made hourly and daily by government agencies, volunteer/citizen observers, ships, planes, automatic weather stations, and Earth-orbiting satellites.